Hello, Jim. How are you?
I'm all right. I've had some health issues recently, but they're getting better. I'm more and more active, more and more mobile, more and more walking. I did spend 19 days in the hospital recently. It's kind of a holiday that I would have been willing to miss, but
Yes,
I'm better now.
I'm very happy that we have you with us today. We are presenting the third book that at Porphyra Publications we publish in Greek, and it is a book on confession, a very essential book, a very essential mystery, if one can say that. And I would like to ask you to pose the first question that I have noted here. And this question is, what interested you so much in the holy mystery of confession as to write a whole book on it?
Well, to give a somewhat autobiographical answer, I was not born in a family where the word confession existed. My mother was from a Methodist Protestant background, and she living in America. My father also American, from a Catholic background. Both of them outside of the church when I was a child, and neither of them ever mentioning the existence of something called confession. It wasn't until I was about 18, 19 years old that the word entered my vocabulary. By that time, I had been baptized and had been received into what in America is called the Episcopal Church, but which is better known internationally as the Anglican Church. There's very little emphasis there on confession, but there is some trace of it. From the Anglicans, I've made my way to the Catholic Church. And then, of course, suddenly I had a major encounter with confession because at that time, 1959, 1960, 61, it was normal for Catholics to go to confession once a week. That was not unusual. And so I began to join the lines, waiting for my turn in the confessional. And I discovered it could be a terrible sacrament, it could be a wonderful sacrament, depending very much on the priest who is witnessing or hearing the confession. And eventually, as you know, I made my way into the Orthodox Church, where there's also, like the Catholic Church, a great emphasis on confession. But as I experienced confession in the Orthodox Church, I found it was much less legalistic and much more personal. What struggles are you having? What problems are you facing? What are the things which you think are not working in your life? It was not so much going down a list of sins, but a dialogue in which there was a tremendous intimacy. At least that was the way I experienced it. Of course, you discover terrible priests who shouldn't be permitted to hear confession, and you find them in all churches where confession exists. Mm-hmm. But it was a very, at its best, confession was a very helpful sacrament or mystery.
In what sense do you feel it was helpful for you, having all this previous experience that you talked to us about?
There is, first of all, an examination of the heart. That confession doesn't begin when you're standing next to a priest telling him something. It begins hours or even possibly days or weeks beforehand, when you are looking at the state of your life and trying to find out where things are not working, where things are going badly, and trying to discover maybe the part that you are accidentally playing in disrupting life, not just for yourself, but for other people. Because it's a social sacrament. Even though you're facing the priests alone, you're bringing all your friends, your relatives, everybody you know, your co-workers are somehow invisibly with you. Mm-hmm.
And
you're not just, there's no such thing as an alone person.
Well, I think that we do not stand alone in the way we perform our religion, our faith. But in a sense, we stand alone in front of God. Isn't that so? Although we are both in a group of people, we are saved all together, but then we have a personal standing in front of him. What would you say on that?
Well, of course we stand alone, but I go back to my image of a crowd of people surrounding us, many of whom some of whom we're having difficulties. That person, if I'm talking about the difficulties I'm having in my relationship with my wife, she is present. She is not visible, but she is present because I'm in the process of trying to understand what is not working. Why is it not working? Is there something that I can do that might transform the relationship? So I have to bring her with me, even though she's not physically there.
So
and my children and my coworkers and work.
So in a sense, we are standing as physical persons on our own, but we are part of all the environment where we belong to. I kind of understood all these things you mentioned to us up to now, but we live in 2021. How do you think
we do.
this ancient mystery could connect with the reality of a modern digital life? How could it connect with younger people that are not that much close to our liturgical life?
Well, the first thing, of course, is to just experiment with confession. Go to different priests. See if there's a priest who can really open his ears widely to you and who has the wisdom to say helpful things that might be healing for you. Hoping that this priest who's there as a witness can find some helpful advice for you, because we're not finding the answers, enough of them by ourselves. We tend to dig the hole that we're in deeper and deeper and get further and further from the light, like the cave of Plato.
So there is a kind of responsibility in our choice of the priest we will talk to.
Yeah, we need to avoid two kinds of priests: the priest who wants to take over your life, and the priest who said, that's no sin. The priest who tells you, oh, well, it happens to everybody, no problem. So these are two extremes. One priest who wants to totally control your life, and another who hears your confession and says, that's not so important.
Yes.
It's important to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to confession to say it.
Yes.
So you need to find a priest who cares about you, who can open his own heart to welcome you into it, but not take control of your life and not dismiss your problems.
Yes. Okay. And I have another question. In a world and a church with so many flaws, how can we feel and believe that forgiveness through confession is given by God, and that what we call the mystery of confession is not an arbitrary action dictated by an unsuccessful and biased intermediary?
Confession has an interesting history. As you may recall, one of the chapters in the book on confession is on the history of confession. It wasn't a very developed mystery in the extremely early church. Of course, there was confession. There always has been confession since human beings began, since Adam and Eve. Adam confessing to Eve, Eve confessing to Adam. I'm sure it happened. Asking forgiveness. I'm sure it happened. It's built into us to want to confess to somebody else the problems that are tearing my life apart, for seeking help to repair your soul. But it developed as the mystery we know in the early church, 4th, 5th century, with the So we call them the desert fathers, and so also there were desert mothers. There were monks in the deserts of Palestine, Egypt, and so forth, who were who possessed such wisdom and who were able to see in the heart of the person facing them that people would come, first of all, monks, and later on lay people, to ask their advice. Father, I'm all the time thinking blah, 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 whatever it is. I'm all the time, I'm an alcoholic. I'm not faithful to my wife or my husband, and so forth and so forth. All these kinds of problems. They looked at these monks as a kind of fountain of wisdom. And what they did in confessing to them became a model that was spread into the whole church, gradually. If you read the stories of the Desert Fathers, these encounters that are recorded in these collections of monastic sayings from the early church, you find no end of examples of this.
Okay, so I don't have any more questions right now, because as I've told you, this video will be inserted in the presentation of your book, and there will be longer talks on the topic from our visiting speakers. At this point, I would like to thank you very much for this brief conversation and wish you all the best with your health.
Thank you. Yeah, my current illness is not one that can be easily cured by confession, but confession will help me get through it.